USS Utah AG-16 was hit by two torpedoes dropped from B-5N Kate bombers at the onset of the attack on Pearl Harbor. She immediately began listing and capsized within 10 minutes. 58 men were lost on Utah during the attack. Attempts to salvage the old ship were abandoned, and today her wreck lies in Pearl Harbor as a war memorial. USS Texas, BB-35, was providing fire support for American troops pushing inland during the invasion of Normandy on 25 June 1944, when at 12:08 Texas and USS Arkansas, BB-33, came under fire from German coastal defense batteries. The two sides engaged in an artillery duel when at 13:16 Texas was hit by a 240 shell that struck the ship's conning tower and support column of the navigation bridge, wounding 11 men, one of whom later died. The damage was negligible, and Texas continued to fire back at the Germans. At 13:37, she scored a revenge hit with a 14-inch shell on the battery which had damaged her. Later in the day at 14:47, she was hit again in the bow by another 240 shell, but this time nobody was hurt, and the projectile was later disarmed. The shell is on display on board the ship today after its donation by the German Army in 1944. USS Nevada, BB-36, was the only battleship to get underway during the Pearl Harbor attack. She was hit by a torpedo, several 250 kg bombs, and possibly an 800 kg bomb. A fire and taking on a list, she maneuvered and was deliberately beached near Hospital Point to prevent her sinking in deeper waters. Nevada lost 60 men killed and 109 wounded in the attack. She was repaired and overhauled by October 1942. While bombarding Iwo Jima, she was hit by a kamikaze which crashed into the main deck near turret number 3. 11 men were killed and 49 wounded, but damage was minor. After the war, Nevada was used as a target ship, first in Operation Crossroads, then sunk by naval gunfire and torpedoes in 1948. USS Oklahoma, BB-37, was hit by at least 5 torpedoes during the opening minutes of the attack on Pearl Harbor. She capsized within 10 minutes of the first hit and lay upside down in the shallow harbor with hundreds of men trapped inside. 429 crewmen died when Oklahoma capsized, but 32 men were rescued from the overturned ship. The ship was righted, refloated, and sunk while under tow to California for scrapping in 1947. USS Pennsylvania, BB-38, was dry-docked in Pearl Harbor on December 7 when the Japanese attack commenced. During the air raid, the ship was struck by a single 250 kg bomb which caused minor damage. She was also set afire from nearby ships sharing the drydock with Pennsylvania. The ship was also targeted by strafing aircraft. 15 men were killed and 38 wounded in the attack. On 12 August 1945, just off the coast of Japan, a lone Japanese torpedo bomber penetrated the Allied defense to hit Pennsylvania with its warhead. The torpedo opened a 30-foot hole in the side of the ship, killed 20 men, and wounded 10 more. Pennsylvania was the last major U.S. ship damaged in the war. She survived Operation Crossroads with minor damage, to be scuttled in 1948. USS Arizona, BB-39, was moored in Pearl Harbor on 7 December 1941 when the attack began. The ship was hit by at least two 800 kg, 1,800 lb, armor-piercing bombs dropped by B-5N Kate bombers during the attack. Moments after the bombs struck, Arizona was torn apart by a gigantic magazine explosion that disintegrated most of the forward part of the ship. Arizona sank into the shallow water of the harbor, taking 1,177 of her crew with her. Today she lies where she sank, just under the surface of the water. A memorial and shrine to her crew was constructed in 1962. USS New Mexico, BB-40, was taking part in the pre-invasion shelling of Lingayen Gulf on 6 January 1945. During the bombardment, she came under heavy attack by kamikaze aircraft, one of which hit the bridge, killing her captain, 29 others and wounding 87. Also killed in this attack was Lieutenant General Herbert Lumsden, the most senior British Army combat fatality of World War II. On 12 May, she was attacked by two kamikazes. One of them plunged into her, the other managed to hit with its bomb. She was set on fire and 54 crew were killed, while a further 119 were wounded. After the war, New Mexico was sold for scrap in 1947. USS Mississippi, BB-41, suffered an explosion in her No. 2 turret during bombardment of Makin Island on 20 November 1943, which killed 43 men. On 9 January 1945, she was struck by a kamikaze while operating in Lingian Gulf, receiving minor damage, but suffered 26 dead and 63 wounded. She was hit again off Okinawa by a kamikaze on 5 June 1945 with light damage and one man killed. She was scrapped in 1957 after a lengthy, prestigious career. USS Idaho BB-42, on 3 May 1945 off Okinawa, was attacked by two Vals and three Kates at 1452. She shot them all down, but one exploded close off her port quarter. Another crashed close aboard her port quarter and exploded, flooding her blisters. Shrapnel was sent flying over the deck, but the ship had taken only minor damage. She was scrapped in 1947. USS Tennessee, BB-43, received two 800 kg bomb hits during the attack on Pearl Harbor. Both weapons caused minor damage to Tennessee's gun turrets while scattering shrapnel across the ship, killing several men including the captain of the West Virginia. The ship was showered with burning debris, falling iron, and burning oil when USS Arizona exploded just to the aft of the ship. Tennessee suffered 4 killed and 22 wounded in the attack. On 12 April 1945, Tennessee was hit by a low-flying kamikaze on the starboard bow, crashing into the signal bridge. The burning wreck slid aft along the superstructure, crushing anti-aircraft guns and their crews, stopping next to Turret 3. Its 250 lb bomb, with what was left of the plane, went through the wooden deck and exploded. 22 men were killed or fatally wounded, with another 107 injured. However, damage was slight, and Tennessee was back to duty 2 days later. She was scrapped in 1959 after years in mothball. USS California, BB-44, was hit by 2 torpedoes and an 800 kg bomb, leaving her sunk in shallow water during the Pearl Harbor raid. She was raised and underwent major reconstruction to modernize the ship, rejoining the fleet in May 1944. While underway on 23 Aug, USS Tennessee collided with California after a steering malfunction. 7 men died in the accident on California. On 20 November 1944, a pair of Zero kamikazes approached the ship. California's gunners shot one of them down, but the other struck her on the port side abreast of the mainmast. Gasoline from the plane's fuel tank started a fire, and a 5-inch shell from another ship accidentally hit one of California's 5-inch guns, exploded inside the turret, and started another fire. Both fires were out within 12 minutes, but 44 men were killed and another 155 were wounded. The ship was scrapped in 1959. USS Colorado, BB-45, was damaged by counter-battery fire during the bombardment of Tinian on 24 July. 43 men were killed, and 198 wounded by 22 shell hits from Japanese shore batteries. However, she continued shelling the island and providing fire support for the invasion troops. On 27 November 1944, she was hit by 2 kamikazes. The first crashed into a port-side 5-inch gun turret and inflicted numerous casualties among personnel in 240 mounts. 19 were killed and 72 wounded. A friendly fire incident on 9 January 1945 accidentally hit her superstructure with gunfire, killing 18 and wounding 51. Colorado was scrapped in 1959. USS Maryland, BB-46, suffered light bomb damage and 4 men killed at Pearl Harbor. She was repaired, refitted at Puget Sound, and rejoined the fleet in 1942. She was torpedoed by a lone G-4M during the Battle of Saipan, which killed 2 men and necessitated repairs at Pearl Harbor. She was damaged on 27 November 1944 by a kamikaze near Leyte Gulf which hit between her number 1 and number 2 turrets, killing 31 of her men and wounding another 30. On 7 April 1945, Maryland was struck by a kamikaze again, which landed onto a 20-gun mount located on top of turret number 3. She suffered 30 dead and 36 wounded. Maryland was repaired and placed in reserve after the war until she was scrapped in 1959. USS West Virginia, BB-48, was extensively damaged by as many as 7 torpedoes and 2 800 kg bombs at Pearl Harbor. The first bomb hit the port side and penetrated the superstructure deck, causing extensive damage to the casemates below. Secondary explosions of the ammunition stored in the casemates caused serious fires there and in the galley deck below them. The second bomb struck the rear superfiring turret roof. It penetrated but failed to explode. She sunk on her keel in shallow water at Pearl Harbor. West Virginia was raised and sent to Puget Sound for major reconstruction. She rejoined the Pacific Fleet on 23 September 1944. During the Battle of Okinawa, she was hit by a kamikaze Oscar that struck her superstructure deck, killing 4 men and wounding 23, but luckily the plane's bomb was a dud. After the war, West Virginia was placed in mothball and scrapped in 1959. USS North Carolina, BB-55, was torpedoed by Japanese submarine I-19 on 15 September 1942, 150 miles southeast of Guadalcanal, the same spread of torpedoes which also hit and sank USS Wasp. She received emergency repairs at Tonga and proceeded to Pearl Harbor for permanent repairs. On 5 April 1945, while participating in the Okinawa campaign, she was hit by a 5-inch shell in a friendly fire accident during a massive kamikaze attack on the fleet, killing 3 and wounding 44. Today she serves in North Carolina as a battleship memorial museum. USS Washington, BB-56, took a small caliber shell, probably an 8-inch 203 shell from the heavy cruiser Atago, to her mast during the naval battle of Guadalcanal, 15 November 1942. Was damaged when she collided with USS Indiana during refueling maneuvers during the Marshall Islands campaign in 1944. The collision caused extensive damage to her bow. Repairs were made at Pearl Harbor. USS Washington never had a fatality on board nor damage taken from enemy action. She was scrapped in 1961. USS South Dakota, BB-57, was grounded on an uncharted coral reef near Tonga while initially deploying to the South Pacific on 6 September 1942. After receiving temporary patches at Tonga, she steamed to Pearl Harbor for permanent repairs. During her participation in the Battle of Santa Cruz Islands, she was hit by 1 bomb during a dive bomber attack from the aircraft carrier Juneau, which landed on the roof of the main turret. 2 men were killed and over 50 were wounded by fragments from the bomb. On 30 October 1942, while maneuvering to avoid a submarine contact, South Dakota collided with the destroyer Mahan, receiving significant damage that needed repairs in Naumea. During Second Naval Battle of Guadalcanal, the ship lost power right as combat was initiated with a Japanese surface task force. South Dakota was illuminated by burning ships and fired upon by the Japanese task force, including battleship Kirishima. It is estimated she was hit by 314, 25, 66, and 18.8 caliber shells. Most of the enemy shells were aimed at the ship's superstructure, thus not threatening the ship's survival. 40 men were killed and 180 wounded from this action. The ship returned to the States for repairs shortly afterward. During the Battle of the Philippine Sea, a D-4Y dive bomber from the aircraft carrier Shikaku hit South Dakota with a 500 lb bomb, disabling a 40 mount, killing 24 and wounding another 77 men. After receiving repairs at Puget Sound, she rejoined the fleet. During the Okinawa Campaign in 1945, she suffered her final wartime damage from an explosion that occurred while loading ammunition which killed 3 men. She was scrapped in 1962. USS Missouri BB-63. On 11 April 1945, a low-flying Kamikaze Zero, although fired upon, crashed on Missouri's starboard side, just below her main deck level. The starboard wing of the plane was thrown far forward, starting a gasoline fire at 5-inch gun mount number 3. The battleship suffered only superficial damage, and the fire was brought quickly under control. The remains of the pilot were recovered on board the ship just aft of one of the 40-gun tubs. The dent made by the Zero in the Missouri side remains to this day. Missouri was the only Iowa-class ship that was damaged in the war. Today, Missouri is a museum ship in Pearl Harbor, watching over the sunken USS Arizona. Aircraft carriers CV. Fleet carriers. USS Lexington, CV-2, was hit by 2 armor-piercing bombs and 2 torpedoes on 8 May 1942 during the Battle of Coral Sea. After several hours of fighting fires and suffering severe internal explosions caused by leaking gasoline vapors, the ship was abandoned and scuttled with a loss of 216 men. USS Saratoga, CV-3, was hit and sent back for repairs multiple times during the war. Her first torpedo hit from the Japanese submarine I-6 on 11 January 1942 killed 9 men. She returned to active duty the day after the Battle of Midway ended. On 31 August 1942, a torpedo from I-26 sent her back to Pearl Harbor until November. On 21 February 1945, Saratoga was repeatedly hit by 5 bombs and 3 kamikaze aircraft in a 3-minute span, killing 123 of her crew and wounding 192. She was sunk by atomic testing during Operation Crossroads in 1946. USS Yorktown, CV-5, was damaged during the Battle of Coral Sea by an armor-piercing bomb which killed and wounded 66 men. She was promptly repaired in 3 days' time and returned in time to fight the Battle of Midway. This time she was hit by 2 bombs and 2 torpedoes and left dead in the water with a severe list. Efforts to bring the ship home were dashed when Yorktown was torpedoed by Japanese submarine I-168 on 7 June 1942. USS Enterprise, CV-6, was damaged several times in the war. The first was during the Battle of the Eastern Solomons, in which 74 men were killed and 95 wounded by dive bomber attacks, and again during the Battle of Santa Cruz when 44 crewmen died. After many close calls throughout the war, she was struck by a Kamikaze Zero fighter on her forward elevator, killing 14 men. Enterprise was the most decorated ship in the history of the U.S. Navy. She was scrapped in 1960. USS Wasp, CV-7, was operating some 150 nautical miles southeast of San Cristobal Island on 15 September 1942 when she sighted torpedo wakes coming straight for her. Wasp was struck by 3 torpedoes fired from Japanese submarine I-19, which hit the vicinity of the ship's gasoline and magazines. Wasp was rocked by several catastrophic explosions over the next few minutes, and it quickly became apparent that her condition was beyond saving. The order to abandon ship was given 10 minutes after the torpedoes hit. Wasp sank with the loss of 193 dead and 366 wounded. USS Hornet CV-8 was hit by multiple bombs, torpedoes, and damaged aircraft during the Battle of Santa Cruz on 26 October 1942 after repeated strikes by Japanese carrier aircraft. Although an effort was made to tow the ship to safety, further air attacks prompted her abandonment and scuttling. 140 sailors from Hornet died as a result of her sinking. USS Essex CV-9 was hit by a low-flying kamikaze along the port edge of her flight deck on 25 November 1944. The kamikaze crashed among planes waiting for takeoff, causing extensive damage, killing 15 men and wounding 44. The ship resumed flight operations a few hours later. She was scrapped in 1975 after a prestigious career. USS Intrepid, CV-11, was struck by a torpedo bomber during Operation Hailstone, which killed 11 men. During raids on Luzon on 25 November 1944, Intrepid was hit by two kamikaze aircraft which left 66 men dead, sending the ship home for repairs. On 16 April 1945, a kamikaze aircraft dove through the flight deck, killing 8 and wounding 21, but the ship was landing planes again within 3 hours. Today she is a museum ship in New York City. USS Franklin, CV-13, was damaged by aircraft bombs on 19 March 1945, 50 miles south of Shikoku, Japan during the Battle of Okinawa. She survived over 40 huge explosions of her own munitions, but was able to make it back to the States under her own power, despite suffering 798 killed and 487 wounded. Although repaired, the ship did not return to active service and was scrapped in 1969. USS Ticonderoga, CV-14, was hit by two kamikazes on 21 January 1945. The first crashed through her flight deck, and its bomb went off just above the hangar deck, setting afire several aircraft. Minutes later, the second kamikaze struck the island's superstructure, causing extensive damage and wounding or killing many high-ranking officers. The carrier suffered 143 killed and 202 wounded. She was scrapped in 1975 after a prestigious career. USS Randolph, CV-15, was hit by a Japanese twin-engine Francis-type flying level on the starboard side. The plane impacted the edge of the flight deck 15 ft from the stern. The bomb load penetrated the hull and below the flight deck before exploding violently, killing 27 men. Pieces of the Japanese plane, as well as the 3 bodies of its crew, were scattered across the flight deck. Randolph was scrapped in 1975 after a prestigious career. USS Lexington, CV-16, was struck by a torpedo bomber off Kwajalein on 4 December 1943, killing 9 men. She was back in action by early March after repairs. On 5 November 1944, a kamikaze aircraft struck the ship's island, causing extensive damage and killing 50 men. Today she is a museum ship in Corpus Christi, Texas. USS Bunker Hill, CV-17, was severely damaged by 2 kamikaze planes striking the carrier within 30 seconds on 11 May 1945 off Okinawa, killing 390 men and wounding 264. The ship was knocked out of the war, and although repaired, she did not see active service after World War II. She was scrapped in 1973. USS Wasp, CV-18, on 19 March 1945, was hit with a 500 lb armor-piercing bomb which penetrated both the flight and hangar decks, then exploded in the crew's galley. Many of her shipmates were having breakfast after being at general quarters all night. 102 crewmen were lost. Despite the losses, Wasp continued operations with 27 minutes of the strike. She was scrapped in 1973 after a prestigious career. USS Hancock, CV-19. On 25 November 1944, a fire exploded an incoming kamikaze some 300 ft, 91 m above the ship, but a section of its fuselage landed amidships and burst into flames. On January 21, a plane returning from a sortie made a normal landing, taxied forward abreast of the ship's island, and disintegrated in a blinding explosion that killed 50 men and wounded 75. On 7 April 1945, a kamikaze cartwheeled across the flight deck and crashed into a group of planes, while its bomb hit the port catapult, causing a tremendous explosion, killing 62 and wounding 71. The ship was scrapped in 1977 after a prestigious career. Aircraft carrier, light CVL. USS Independence, CVL-22, was attacked on 20 November 1943 by a group of aircraft low on the water. 6 were shot down, but the aircraft launched at least 5 torpedoes, one of which hit the carrier's starboard quarter. Seriously damaged with 17 dead and 23 wounded, the ship steamed to Funafuti on 23 November for emergency repairs. Independence returned to San Francisco on 2 January 1944 for more permanent repairs. She survived the war and atomic bomb tests at Operation Crossroads to be scuttled off California in 1951. USS Princeton, CVL-23, was off the Philippines when on 24 October 1944, shortly before 10:00 a.m., she was attacked by a lone D-4Y Judy dive bomber which dropped a single bomb, striking the carrier between the elevators and punching through the hangar before detonating. Although structural damage was minor, a fire broke out and quickly spread due to burning gasoline, thus causing further explosions, so she was scuttled. USS Birmingham and USS Irwin approached and attempted to fight the fire and rescue crew members. A few hours later, a second, larger explosion shook the Princeton, possibly caused by an explosion of one or more bombs in the magazine. Birmingham suffered extensive damage to her superstructure and numerous casualties. Irwin was also damaged, but stayed close to rescue survivors. By 16:00, the fires were out of control and the remaining personnel were evacuated. At 17:49, after being torpedoed by USS Reno, an enormous explosion destroyed the entire forward section and sent flames and debris up to 2,000 feet into the air. Princeton sank at approximately 17:50 with a loss of 108 men. However, 233 men were killed and 426 wounded on the USS Birmingham. USS Belleau Wood, CVL-24. On 30 October 1944, off the Philippines, gunners on Belleau Wood shot down a kamikaze over the ship which fell on her flight deck aft, causing several fires and igniting ammunition in planes on deck awaiting takeoff. 92 men were killed during this attack. She survived the war to serve for a short time in the French Navy, then was sold for scrap in 1960. USS Cabot, CVL-28. On 25 November 1944, Cabot had fought off several kamikaze when one, already flaming from hits, crashed into the flight deck on the port side, destroying the still-firing 20-gun platform, disabling the 40 mounts and a gun director. Another kamikaze crashed close aboard and showered the port side with shrapnel and burning debris. 62 men were killed or wounded, but she continued to maintain her station in formation and operate effectively. Temporary repairs were made. She served in the Spanish Navy after World War II for 22 years and was finally scrapped in 2002 after preservation attempts failed. Aircraft Carrier Escort CVE. USS Block Island, CVE-21, was torpedoed off the Canary Islands at 20:13 on 29 May 1944. The German submarine U-549 had slipped undetected through her screen. The submarine put 3 torpedoes into the carrier before being sunk herself by depth charges. The carrier lost 6 men in the attack. The remaining 951 were picked up by the escort screen. This was the only American carrier sunk in the Atlantic during the war. USS Sangamon, CVE-26, was rearming at Karamaretto during the Battle of Okinawa on 4 May 1945, when at 19:55 a Ki-45 kamikaze crashed into the center of her deck. Its bomb penetrated the flight deck and exploded in the hangar. Initial damage was extensive. Fires broke out on the flight deck, the hangar deck, and in the fuel deck. Communications from the bridge were lost within 15 minutes, and the ship was soon out of control. By 2015, however, steering control had been established, and the ship was brought back to a course that helped the crew fight the myriad fires scattered over the CVE. By 22:30, all fires were under control. The attack killed 46 and wounded 116. USS Swanee, CVE-27, was operating off Samar when at 07:40 on 25 October 1944, her task force Taffy 1 was jumped by land-based planes from Davao in the first deliberate suicide attack of the war. After shooting down several kamikazes, Suwannee was hit by an enemy plane at 0804 about 40 feet forward of the after elevator. The plane's bomb compounded the fracture when it exploded between the flight and hangar decks, tearing a 25-foot gash in the latter and causing a number of casualties. Within 2 hours, her flight deck was sufficiently repaired to enable the escort carrier to resume air operations. Just after noon on 26 October, another group of kamikazes jumped Taffy 1. A Zero crashed into Suwannee's flight deck at 12:40 and careened into a torpedo bomber which had just been recovered. The two planes erupted upon contact, as did 9 other planes on her flight deck. The resulting fire burned for several hours, but was finally brought under control. The casualties for 25-26 October were 107 dead and 160 wounded. USS Santee, CVE-29, was sailing as part of Taffy 1 off the northern coast of Mindanao on 25 October 1944 when at 0740, a kamikaze managed to sneak over the formation and dove into the center of Santee, crashing through the flight deck and starting fires in the hangar deck. These fires were quickly brought under control, and by 0751, the ship was fully operational. 16 men were killed and 27 wounded. Minutes later at 0756, a torpedo fired from Japanese submarine I-56 struck the ship, causing flooding of several compartments and creating a 6 degrees list to starboard. Emergency repairs were completed by 0935, and the carrier had kept station with the other ships in the group. USS Liscum Bay CVE-56 was operating off the Gilbert Islands, 24 November 1943, when she was torpedoed by Japanese submarine I-175 around 0510. The torpedo struck behind the after engine room and detonated the ship's bomb magazine, causing a devastating explosion that engulfed the ship and sent shrapnel flying as far as 5,000 yards, 4,600 m, away. The entire task force was rocked by the explosion, but no other ships were significantly damaged. A mushroom cloud erupted, rising thousands of feet above the wreck of Liscum Bay. The detonation sheared off nearly the entire rear end of the carrier, killing everyone behind the forward bulkhead of the aft engine room. Both the hangar and flight decks were heavily damaged. The forward part of the hangar was immediately engulfed in flames, igniting the few remaining planes on the flight deck. Planes fell off the carrier's deck. Steam, compressed air, and fire main pressure were lost throughout the ship. Fires on the flight deck caused ammunition within the burning aircraft and anti-aircraft guns to detonate, further complicating matters. The gasoline-coated water surrounding Liscum Bay caught fire, hampering survivors' efforts to escape. At 0533, only 23 minutes after the explosion, Liscum Bay listed to starboard and sank. 53 officers and 591 enlisted men were killed, while 272 survived.